Hello, everybody. Welcome to All Villa, No Filler. Please remember to subscribe to this podcast. It really helps us grow. We love doing this. We want to keep on growing. We want to keep on meeting fellow Villa fans. So please do subscribe, comment below. And look, if you're on Spotify, Apple, whatever podcast you listen to on audio networks, just get subscribing, following, and maybe even a kind little 5-star review. That would really help us on Spotify, particularly Apple, whatever it is. Anyway, enough of the old um, you know, advertising or whatever. Uh, Big weekend for Aston Villa, isn't it? Tottenham play Arsenal on Sunday. Arsenal have bounced back from the Villa and Bayern Munich defeats in style. Very comfortable win over Wolves last week, 2-0. And then, my goodness, they absolutely battered Chelsea 5-0 in an incredible performance on Tuesday night. Incredible in how bad Chelsea were and how good Arsenal were as well. And since then, Pochettino, the Chelsea manager, his name has been appearing within quite reputable media sources that he might not be long for this world in the Chelsea job. So it makes you wonder what kind of a mental state are Chelsea going in, or what kind of mental state are the Chelsea players in going into this game at Villa Park on Saturday. So I mentioned Tottenham Arsenal because, of course, we keep one eye on how Tottenham are doing. But in the end, all we can do really is focus on Aston Villa. The ball is in our court. We've gone and got two absolutely incredible. I'm still coughing. I'm still ill, which is mad. We've gone and got two absolutely incredible wins against Arsenal away. Followed that up with a 3-1 against Bournemouth, having just beaten Lille in the Europa Conference League as well. Incredible stuff. Incredible week. It feels like the momentum is with Villa at the moment, but of course, look, football's weird. Chelsea just went and beat Everton 6-0. And Everton, of course, were on the receiving end of that beating. Since then, Everton have gone and won two massive games, beat Forest at home, and then went and beat Liverpool at home 2-0 for the first time in a million years at Goodison Park. And then following that, Chelsea went and lost 1-0 to Man City in the FA Cup semi-final. They're very unlucky to lose it. And then they went and lost 5-0 to Arsenal. Football's weird. So who knows how the seesaw, how the pendulum swings, and things could change again on Saturday night at Villa Park. Don't write Chelsea off is what I would say. Pochettino, I know it's not gone too brilliantly for him in his time so far at Chelsea, but, there are actually signs for Chelsea that they were improving somewhat. They hadn't lost in the Premier League since February 4th until that Arsenal game. So that's nearly 3 months of not losing in the Premier League. It felt a little bit like he was starting to get the act together, maybe, but there were also hints that things weren't quite right when they drew 2-2 away at Sheffield United. They barely, could have lost to 10-man Burnley at home. I think they drew that as well. Burnley had a player sent off in the first half. And to be quite frank, watching the highlights of that, Burnley had the better chances. Chelsea were very lucky not to lose that as well. Jay Rodriguez could have scored towards the end. So a couple of hints that, sometimes teams, and I used to think Mourinho was guilty of this at times with his team, is that sometimes there's a certain approach managers have where when they sit deeper and love to hit a team on the counter, if a team does that to them, they sometimes struggle to find a way out. Because if they sit there letting an opposition team come at them, what then can happen is they can win the ball in a certain position, and that suddenly just is the trigger for all of their attacking players to go, and the opposition's defence is in a bit of a chaotic moment, and then that's when you strike and score. Mourinho's Real Madrid used to do that all the time. Mourinho's Chelsea did it. Mourinho's Inter did it. Brilliant Inter side did it all the time. But at Real Madrid, they were the team I watched very closely in that era when they played Barcelona, and that was essentially a reaction to them. But what I did remember was a game where they played Real Mallorca, right? And I remember Mallorca, I think it ended up being a draw maybe. But that was where the first hints to me were that Mourinho, I wouldn't say was getting found out, but there was a way to play him. And sometimes it was due to Mourinho unto what he does to others. Sit back and force his teams to try and play. Now, it was very difficult to do that. Trying to raise my seat here. Very difficult to do that when, they have such brilliant attacking players who can just have a moment of magic, as Steven Gerrard would say, like Cristiano Ronaldo and all that. But sometimes they those teams were built in such a way that they would counter and counter strike you, and built in such a way that they couldn't figure out a way to play through you when you just sat back. Now, if you look at Chelsea, there are some hints that potentially under Pochettino, it's a little bit like that. They're a very good counter-attacking side. They're very good pressing side when they sit a little bit deeper. But Arsenal the other night went a little bit deeper than usual, and Chelsea just didn't really ever look like finding a way through it. Whereas every time Arsenal won the ball back and they pressed forward, they just caused chaos for Chelsea. It was almost doing to Pochettino what he likes to do to other teams. Now, we have learnt the hard way with Chelsea that you can't write them off. Think back to the FA Cup game we played against them, right? And I think, it was in late January, I think was the exact time. That was probably the one moment this season where Villa had a real wobble, and you started to think, are we seeing what we always see with Villa? It happened in the O'Neill era, it happened in the John Gregory era, where we've had a great run so far, but we've had one or two bad results in January, February, and are we now going to cave in? Well, Professor Unai Emery is built a different stuff. And these players are built of different stuff. And instead of caving in and collapsing after, the Newcastle loss at home, bad lost to Manchester United at home, never should have lost that game, lost to Chelsea at home. Having had such a brilliant run at home of 15 wins in a row, we then went and had a couple of really bad results. The United game, I think we should have won that. We were all over them. But Chelsea and Newcastle, they were two games where we got done. We got done. And what I think happened was that, I'll pull up a picture now, right? If you look at this, Boubacar Kamara is in the centre of the pitch, right? It's early on in the game, but Chelsea's press was so good. You had Enzo Fernandez on his back, right? And he was surrounded, gave the ball away. Chelsea immediately broke on us because we were in a chaotic moment. We were out of sync. And then Conor Gallagher soon followed that up to make it 1-0, right? And that all came from putting pressure on Boubacar Kamara. And what I remember Chelsea did was, and it was not dissimilar to what Newcastle had done just before, was that it kind of felt like Cole Palmer and Nicholas Jackson was always sitting on our centre backs whenever they had the ball, right? And Madueke would then pounce on our fullback as soon as they got the ball. And Enzo Fernandez and I need to look at the player it was here. Enzo Fernandez and I think Conor Gallagher were both on Luiz and Kamara. So it was very, very difficult to play out when they were showing such high energy, high intensity, right? So we got caught, right? And that was a good example of it in the first moment. Chelsea were very high energy. But what's worth remembering as well is that Aston Villa's defence was a little bit, I would say, probably not our strongest defence. At the back, you had it was Moreno on the left, Clement Longley, Diego Carlos, or Matty Cash at right back, I think it was. It wasn't our finest hour. It probably wasn't our greatest defense. And we got caught. And so if I show you now another moment, again, I thought a lot of the problems that Chelsea were causing wasn't just with their press in that game and causing trouble for Longley and Carlos when they tried to play out, but also it was from Madueke and Malo Gusto working really well together down the right. It was Madueke who was getting forward, put that ball out to the right for Malo Gusto, and a super ball into the area. Now, I mean, what Cash and Carlos were doing to allow Madueke or to allow Nicholas Jackson just to get in the centre of them. I mean, it was just poor defending all round, but it was great work from I think particularly from Malo Gusto and Madueke. And I think Malo Gusto, I think all the focus is on Cole Palmer this season about how well he's done for Chelsea. Of course, he deserves it. His numbers are brilliant, but I mean, I think Malo Gusto's been a great signing for them as well. I think Reece James has been a big loss for them at right back, but Malo Gusto has stepped up and been a brilliant player for them. But it looks like he's not going to be able to be available for Saturday. He's got a knee injury, so it seems to me like he's potentially going to be out. He's not been pictured training like Cole Palmer has. So Cole Palmer also missed the game on uh, Tuesday night against Arsenal, but that I think was an illness. So he has been pictured training. There's a good chance he'll be back for Saturday night. But Enzo Fernandez, who was a key part of that press in January in the FA Cup, he's out. Enzo Fernandez, who also scored a brilliant free kick to make it 3-0 against us, he's out. And also, so yes, Gusto and Enzo Fernandez. If Gusto is out, if Fernandez definitely is, if the two of them are missing, that's a big loss for Chelsea. That's a big, big problem for them, I think. And you know, let's face it, Nicholas Jackson's not in the greatest form at the moment. And also, if you think about it, whilst we struggled with their press, um, I think not having Pau Torres in that situation and potentially having Conte as our main centre, the right centre back, I think that's a problem, right? Because I think Conte and Pau in particular are better at playing out than I think Longley and Carlos have been. It's not saying I think they're poor defenders, or it's just that we have very, very high level defenders. And some people may question me on Conte, but I personally think he's better than Carlos. But Pau Torres in particular, look, we all know the deal there. He is our. There's a reason Unai Emery was so keen to get him in from Villarreal, and that is that he is one of the best ball playing centre backs in world football. And I think the story may have been different had he been there in January. But I do think the story will be different tomorrow if Pau Torres plays and Chelsea try to press. And I think we'll probably just handle it better than we did previously. Now, I'm interested to know whether Unai Emery maybe repeats what he did against Arsenal in the second half when he went a little bit deeper and allowed Arsenal to press us, and we just broke out, knocked it long to players like Morgan Rogers, to Ollie Watkins to hold it up and cause some problems that way, bypass their press entirely. Maybe we'll do that, and Morgan Rogers has shown he can do it. And on top of that, Alpha Gilchrist. He had a really tough night out at right back, because let's face it, if Gusto's not there, if Reece James isn't there, he may be the one to step in and play at right back. He had a very tough day against Arsenal, and you'd think Morgan Rogers, the form he's in, might just cause a few problems for him. Ollie Watkins as well. Look, there's no reason to think Watkins can't cause Chelsea's defence problems either. So it'd be interesting to know if Chelsea try and press hard, whether we repeat what we did against Bournemouth, maybe against Arsenal as well, hit that ball into a Morgan Rogers or a Zaniolo, physical, holding it up, winning the key duel, or into Watkins as well. So not afraid to go direct over them. But also, I think that if we compare it to the game in January when we really struggled to play out and we deservedly got battered, having Pau Torres, I think, will be key for us to keep playing out. And also, it's worth remembering that game, Moussa Diaby scored late on. Whilst Chelsea probably conserved their energy at 3-0 up, I do think Villa did come back into that game and cause them problems, particularly when Diaby came onto the pitch. But look, I think this weekend, I think if Malo Gusto's out, Enzo Fernandez is out. If Cole Palmer is not 100%, and, with Morgan Rogers, the form he's in, targeting that right back area of Chelsea, there's no real reason to believe that we can't go into this as a team that should believe they're favourites and match that with a performance. But look, as I said, don't write Chelsea off solely because Pochettino is a very talented and gifted coach. The question for them, I think, if I was a Chelsea fan, is how do you bounce back from the last week, which has been a disaster of a week, really. Going out the FA Cup, which is kind of all they were playing for now, really. This could still get Europe, of course, but are these players that bothered about that? Are they? What's the unity like within that dressing room? Have they got they pressed hard against us in the FA Cup in January because they were playing for something, right? They were aiming to impress, they're aiming to improve, and they, were going for a play to progress in the FA Cup. A trophy they could have feasibly won. Right now, it's a question about their mentality, really. Can they repeat that level of performance? Can they work as hard as they did in January at Villa Park? That's the question Pochettino asks. It's not easy going into it for them, having all the talk about Pochettino potentially not being there beyond this summer with a couple of big injuries. It's not going to be a simple task, particularly after the two results I've just had as well. But as I say, never write a team off ever. And there's no reason to think Pochettino hasn't been sat there all week preparing a game plan for Villa, which might just cause us a fair few problems. But that said, there's also a fair few reasons to think that Aston Villa can go into this game high on confidence and believing that we can go 9 points clear of Tottenham, who then play on Sunday against Arsenal. I'm excited for it. Unai Emery has made me excited about Aston Villa whenever they play, all times. So, yes, I'm feeling good. Some great results recently, and truly believing that Aston Villa can get potential Champions League. Now, something else I just want to quickly mention. Reported by Rudy Galletti, who is a journalist from TV and Della Sport, linked with AC Milan, I believe, according to his Twitter account. Seems to be involved with Sky Sport as well. I have seen him around. I've seen him talk before. He said that AC Milan have included Diego Carlos among the names monitored to strengthen their defence. First contact has apparently begun, as reported elsewhere. Interesting. I think there's going to be some movement this summer with Villa. Diego Carlos, he's over 30, doesn't play every single week. So, would I see Emery being potentially interested in that? I think there probably is going to be movement this summer, and that's not a link I would take lightly at all. I'd say it's one that could have some real potential. I do like Diego Carlos. I think he's a real big physical presence and, offers something to Villa. But I think if Villa were to, explore that one, and if he were to be guaranteed starting every week at AC Milan, I think you'd say fair enough. But yeah, one to keep an eye on anyway. Look, but what we need to focus on, Chelsea next. Come on, the mighty Villa. We can do this. Please like and subscribe. Up the mighty Villa.